Hello all, welcome back to another Tuesday edition of BA Creative. In our, you know what, I just now decided this is a series, right now in this moment. This is our gel printing series. Last week, if you tuned in, you see the prints that we did. I'm showing you right here on camera, where we just experimented with household items to create texture. That one I really liked, and it was already kind of busy, so I'm just setting that off to the side because I didn't really think it needed anything else. But the rest of these in our part 2 series, which is happening today, that's what you're watching, we're going to be adding some layers to these using stencils on the gel plate. Let's get started. So I'm working on the same 5x7 gel plate that I worked with last week, just to make sure that all of my proportions and dimensions are the same. But that really actually comes down to the size of the stencil that you use. Larger stencils are going to create larger stenciling, and smaller stencils are going to give larger. So I just wanted to make sure that I was still kind of working in the same confines of what I was doing. I'm primarily using Dina Wakley media stencils because that's the majority of what I have. If I can remember the names of them as I'm doing this, I will totally call those out. That was her fractured chevron stencil, and it's probably my favorite stencil. I don't even bother putting it away. I use it so much. When I'm adding stenciling to gel plates, I realized, okay, let me back up. When I'm adding stenciling, I usually do this all in one fell swoop. It's very unlike me to break it up like this, because that means if I'm doing it all at once, I'm working within the same colors and usually the same paint. But because I broke this up into 2 separate videos, I realized while I was doing this that last week I used Dilutions paint on the gel plate, and this week I'm using Dina Wakley Media acrylics because I'm working through a stencil. I prefer to use a heavier body paint when I work through a stencil because I think that I get a crisper, cleaner image. I don't have as good a luck working with thinner paints. So because I am using 2 different brand and style paints, it was a little bit challenging to come up with a good color combination, because it's 2 separate color palettes. I mean, duh. So what you're seeing me do is adding in a lot of white. If I couldn't find a Dina Wakley color that really worked with the Dilutions color, I decided that the best thing to do was to use a neutral through the stencil. So that's why you'll see a lot of these get covered up with white, which is exactly what I'm doing here. So you may remember this particular pull from last week, the one that was not great, and this is how you can fix that. This wound up being one of my favorite prints at the end. I'm just running some plain white acrylic paint through that Dina Wakley Smovels. I think that's the name. Check the description box below. I'm probably not going to be able to call it out. You guys know I can't remember stuff. So I'm just running some of that paint through that stencil, and I'm brayering off on a smaller jelly plate that I'm using basically as a stamp palette for some foam some foam stamps that I have. So now I'm going to pull the print, and because I added a lot of white paint through that really large stencil, I was able to cover up some of all that stuff that was not that great. And you can see it kind of paid off, like as I'm pulling it here, right here. See, it covered up most of the parts that I had made mud on. Because I used so much paint, I was able to pull a couple of ghost prints on a couple of other different prints from last week. So again, I'm just adding back in some more white to create more neutral, which will give me an opportunity to work with the Dina Wakley color paints over top of those Dilutions. This is another Dina Wakley stencil. I can't remember the name. Surprise. And it's a number stencil. So what you saw me doing was trying to figure out which was the front and which is the back. If you use a number or letter stencil on the gel plate, do remember to flip it. I actually wind up using a couple number stencils, and this is the only one I remembered to flip. So if you don't flip the stencil so it looks backwards, when you pull the print, all of the letters and number stencils, all the letters and numbers will be backwards on your print. Now I'm using a mask. That's again a Dina Wakley mask. If you don't have a mask, okay, and a mask is literally just something that is covering up the bottom part or the top layer of the gel plate. If you don't have a mask, have no fear, friends. If you can get your hands on some magazines, and thrift stores are a great place to get magazines, cut out some fashion images, like people in fashion poses. I just made a fashion pose. You guys can't see that. But if you cut them out, especially on really glossy paper, they'll hold up pretty well, and you can totally use those as a body mask. Just an idea, because that's what I did quite a bit of until I got some of her mask. Now I am going back in with some lemon. This is lemon, and I'm going to stencil, but I'm going to do it a little different this time. That is a Stencil Girl stencils, the only one I have. I absolutely love it. And I am pulling it over top this time because I don't want to lift everything. I want to just lift it through the stencil. And I'm using just some plain white copy paper to pull off the ghost prints. I am keeping those though, because next week, if you come back, which I totally hope you will, we're going to finish all these off, and we're actually going to wind up making some mixed media greeting cards with them. So not every single one of these backgrounds will get turned into like the background for one of my cards. About half of them will actually get cut up and used to be stamped on and focal points and stuff like that. This winds up being another one of my favorites, and it's because of the color combination, though I pulled that so quickly I forgot to show you. My bad. Be sure to stay with me till the end of the video, which I hope you will anyway, but I'll show you all of the prints. This right here, you guys, oh my gosh, this is how we fixed that horribly ugly stencil pull from last week, and I absolutely love it. Top 2 favorites. Now I'm going back in with another number stencil. This is a Dilutions, and as you can see, I did not flip it because I forgot. So all of the numbers are going to be backwards on the prints. I'm using another gold, I think that's Ancient, I think that's the name of it, by Dina Wakley, because that had so much color already going on. I needed to add some neutrals back in. When you're gel printing, and if your gel print kind of starts to get away from you a little bit, you can almost always push it back with white paint or some other neutral. I have a hard time sometimes remembering what colors are considered neutral. That's Night, by the way, in the Dina Wakley brand paints. I try to use that instead of black, especially when I'm doing gel prints, because it's a really, really dark blue and it's a neutral. This is how I remember if something is a neutral. If it typically would come in a pair of pants, like the color, you could find a pair of pants in these colors, it is probably a neutral, because pants are made to be able to wear with just about anything, and you can't always wear every shirt with every pant. I feel like it was a very convoluted way to explain it, but that's how I remember. I ask myself when I'm looking at a color, would I have a pair of pants in this? If the answer is yes, it's probably a neutral. Oh, so it would appear that I am making a horrible mistake. I'm not, just hang in there. So I've made some homemade masks using my Cricut. They were just random shapes I designed in the studio, cut them out, and then I use them quite a bit as masks, as you can see. In this way, I'm using the stencil mask almost as a stamp, and I did that a couple of more times earlier. I was just talking and I couldn't catch it on video. Anyway, so you can also use your stencils as a type of stamp, if you will. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this print, and you're going to think, oh, Shannon, no, girl, you have made a horrible mistake. Just wait. See, I was kind of sheepishly trying to slide it off camera because I even thought I had made a horrible mistake. No, it's actually going to turn out to be one of the best prints that I make. Probably of all time. I think I'm probably going to scan it into my computer so that I can reprint it if I want to. Now I am taking some fuchsia paint and I'm laying it down through yet another stencil, and as you can see, I took that print and used the stencil again as a stamp and just braid over top. That one's really nice too. I really like that one. I liked the fuchsia with the cheddar so much. I thought it was like this perfect color combination. I went to my power color combo, which is fuchsia, cheddar, and peacock. If you use, well, okay, let me say, in my humble opinion, if you use this color combo, boom, right there, you will create magic. As long as everything's dry, it is almost impossible to create anything that is not amazing if you use that color combo, which is why I call it my power color combo. So now I'm just segmenting off the ghost on that. And if you'll notice, I did this a couple of times when I did this. I very seldom pulled the entire stencil print over the whole background. I did things in segments because that's how you create a little bit more interest. I don't want to necessarily just keep covering everything up over and over again, because then things get muddy. And by using segments, you create more visually interesting layers. So at this point, my battery camera died. I apologize. The only thing that you really missed was me finishing off this print, which kind of got away from me. Things got a little crazy a little bit. There's some lime green in there. And I finished off a couple of the other prints that I didn't show. It was only about 3. So these are all of the finished prints. Oh my gosh, I love that print. Oh, it's my favorite. These are all of the finished prints, and as you can see, some are fairly simple and some have a lot more detail and color. Next week, when we finish off when we actually use these to make something, you'll see why. Remember, not all of these are going to wind up being backgrounds. Some of them are going to be torn up, stamped over top of, used as collage pieces. You'll see. I really hope that you'll come back next week, and as we finish off this gel printing series and we make some cards. So I hope you guys liked them. Let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite, and if you have any ideas for focal points, I would love to hear it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.